In this era of downloaded tunes, digitized backup bands, and performers who couldn't sing a lick without plenty of sound effects, we embrace those moments when true artists take the stage. And one last time, we're told, in Chicago, one of the most iconic bands in rock history will tune up and continue to befuddle those who wonder what the appeal really is and why they've lasted so long. He is their former manager and author of the book High Notes, a rock memoir working with rock legends Jefferson Airplane through the Doors to the Grateful Dead. Richard Loren joins us on the show today. Richard, thanks a lot for being here.
Hey, Ed, how are you? Nice to meet you.
You also, my friend. Listen, this is something that has vexed me even as a kid because I will be honest with you. I was never a huge Dead fan. I had a couple of great. Shakedown Street was the album that I really, for whatever reason, found the Dead. Why is it that people are just maniacal about the Dead? What's that draw?
Well, I think there's thousands of different answers to that question. I think, it's very difficult to answer that question, whether it's the magnetism of Jerry Garcia, he was an amazingly charismatic figure in the Dead scene and led them, or the music being so different than any other kind of music. Music is a kind of a magic that casts a spell of enchantment on people, and it's the neuroscientists, physicists, they all try to explain music and the spirit of a song, but it's kind of impossible. And I think that musicians are magicians in a way, and I think that intuitive musicians, and I don't think anybody was more an intuitive musician than Jerry was. And I think that there's something about the purity of their music in the sense that it's not contrived. It's the musicians interface with each other. They learn their instruments and then they play together. There's no set song list for every show.
Is it as easy to say that it wasn't pretentious music? Because when you had these guys on stage, everybody just looked like they had just come out of somebody's living room. They were hanging around. Looks like they were stoned half the time anyway. But at least they were all just a bunch of guys getting together playing music because that's what they liked.
Yeah. And they also, Jerry never really wanted to have a hit record. In a way, Touch of Grey kind of began the downfall of the Grateful Dead. It expanded their audience base, but it took away the charm of the Deadhead scene and traveling in and being able to play in places that were not super, super large, even though they did play coliseums. But later on, it just got so big that, I don't know that this was the best thing for them. I mean, in fact, Jerry Garcia never wanted to have a hit record. He said that could be the downfall of the band because then we'll have to play the hits and every show will be the same and we won't be able to be the intuitive musicians that we are.
So the Dead are getting back together again, July 3rd through the 5th. Well, okay, members of the Dead. I'm sorry, you're right.
The four remaining musicians are getting together to play Grateful Dead songs.
Remaining musicians. Thank you very much. I didn't want to, because somebody called, wait a minute, the Dead are getting back together? Jerry's coming back? There'll actually be somebody there, I think, who may expect Jerry to show up with wings, actually, which probably would happen.
I don't know anything about that, but I know that the Grateful Dead died 20 years ago this August when Jerry died.
It seems that they've never really died, though, because here we have these musicians getting back together, the original Dead members, Mickey Hart, Phil Lesh, Bob Weir, of course, Bill Kreutzmann, all getting together. Going to be at Wrigley Field July 3rd through the 5th. More than 60,000 individual envelopes flooded the post office box in California from the Deadheads trying to get tickets. They had to shut that down already. Doesn't this tell us, though, that it doesn't make a difference? You've got grandparents right now who taught their kids, and you've got parents now teaching their kids to be Deadheads, still 20 years after the band has disappeared.
Well, there's I gave a talk the other day, and there was a 50-year span between the people in my audience. They were like 22-year-olds and 72-year-olds, and they were equally divided, oddly enough. So they reached all kinds of fan bases. They spoke to the power of the music, I think.
What is it that the Dead did? Well, I probably can answer this, but I wanted to get your opinion because you've been around so many great rock bands. I mean, let's not forget Jefferson Airplane, the Doors, so many others who were there. It seems as if they had a great connection with their audience at a very earthy level, and now what we don't have a lot of artists who do that anymore. If you don't have the sound effects, if you don't have all the extra audio with you, if you don't have the dancers, it seems as if people believe they can't be successful. It seems that they could be, but they just can't capture that of what those great rock bands were, can they?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think there's been well, obviously a corporatization of rock and roll and all music for that matter. I mean, its biggest expression comes in the media, and not so much in live performances because they build the artists. They're built by the corporations, the record companies, and the media, and so on and so forth. And so it's a lot different. But I have a lot of hope for music now. I think there's a lot of young new musicians coming to the forefront now that are really very good now. I mean, we went through that era of the 80s and 90s and so on where, punk rock and heavy metal and stuff, which was, kind of anger music. And I think that now we're coming back to the melodic music where, that was started by the Beatles, basically. It's carried on through for years until basically the end of the 80s or even into the 80s, in my opinion.
I only got about a minute left. You got 3 shows coming up, July 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And they say that we've heard that this is going to be it. 1 shot, 1 appearance, 3 shows, and it's all done. Come on, Richard, give us the real scoop here. Come on. If it goes well, maybe come back for a few more.
Well, who knows? Who's to say? It's basically those guys have to get together and rehearse and play, and it's going to be decided on, I think, whether they get off on one another and the music and the fans and the support that they get.
They don't rehearse. Come on, Richard. They don't just sit down. That's what the Dead's all about. They just sit down and start to play.
Well, yeah, but it's a connection that they have to have. Musicians have to connect. It's not just sitting down and playing notes. Musicians have to connect as a band. And if they love what they're playing again, they may do it again. But if it's work, they haven't played together in a very, very long time. So it remains to be seen, how much rehearsing they do beforehand.
As long as it's not work, there it is. I like that. That's the best way to put it. I want to remind everybody, the book again is called High Notes, a rock memoir working with rock legends Jefferson Airplane through the doors to the Grateful Dead. And the Grateful Dead are going to be at Soldier Field in Chicago, July 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I can't be there. Don't even try to get a ticket. They're going to be gone soon. Richard, Loren, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Always a pleasure. Take care. And MidPoint will continue.